So once more, welcome to Sculpt Quest. With you seated is Marvin Tabi Ashu, your own favorite host. And with me today, I'm still having a guest that has been here before, but because of the situation of things, we had to invite her to come over again and share with us about things that are happening around town, the security problems that we have as a community. So, Amal, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming. And is there any other need for you to reintroduce yourself? You remember the last time you talked about yourself, you just gave your name, but what you do for our community, it's kind of hidden. So would you mind telling us what you actually do, the effort that you put in regarding towards our community?
Yeah, Amal Abbass, and I'm managing director of Tubman Network. That means I support people, Africans who fled the war from Ukraine, and also other African communities, whether they're African German or anywhere else in the from the mother continent and the diaspora. It keeps me busy, I can say that, to address the various needs. And sadly, a lot of the times the reason why there is emergency and crisis in our community is connected to racist incidents. I think we live in a time where just recently on Sylt, one of the islands in Germany, has been, rich kids that filmed themselves with the slogan, sort of kind of dancing and celebrating with the slogan, foreigners out, foreigners out. And the fact that, it's cool to party to this very hurtful lyrics, and particularly because shortly before that, there was a publication of the plans of AfD and other right-wing party members planning to deport not only people who are here deemed as migrants, but also people like me and others who have from birth a German passport and are born in this country because, as they said, we're unwanted. And some people feel more entitled to be in Germany than others. So this is the times that we live in, and that is unfortunately a very harsh reality that many people are not aware of, how people are struggling in their daily lives.
Let me comment a little bit. So when you say, they say people like you, Germans, have to go, where do they expect you to go?
In the plans of the AfD, there was a report that was published because somebody, a very brave team of journalists will link, add the links at the end of this video. They were of the opinion that we should be deported to some place in Africa.
Some place in Africa. And what would that place be? Are they going to create a space to accommodate you, or they're just going to create an unrest in a region so people can flee and then
it sounds
pump you guys in?
It sounds like a ridiculous thing, I agree. But if you look at the deals that the UK is making with
the Rwanda situation,
then you know that even crazy things can be crazier, because in the end of the day, people are meant to be deported to Rwanda, and then Rwanda kicks them out, and you're in a kind of unwanted situation.
But at least those ones know their way back home, because they're coming from different parts of Africa. That I can say, for example, the Gambians that are in that list will just find their way back home to Gambia. So if they people like you, who were born here without any trace to these points that I'm, quoting here, what would the situation look like?
And where would the Sudanese go home to right now when the country is at war? So that's not true for all, that we have a place to go home to, which obviously emotionally doesn't feel very nice to be in that situation. That's number one. Number two is, of course, also you have to have the means to be able to travel. And I would say there is one positive news, and that is that there is more and more African countries that are inviting people from the diaspora and say that anyone with an African heritage is welcome home. Countries that give citizenship to African descendants, and I'm very much applauding this trend. So that people know that there is a place that welcomes them and the gifts that they have to bring to this world. But at the same time, it's an insane situation that we find ourselves here in Germany.
It should be a voluntary thing, not you being asked to leave a place that you almost call home. Because most people, for example, someone like you that was born here, you've been to Sudan for a fact. You know some of your family members back there, but again, you do not. I'm not sure that you hold a Sudanese passport or a Sudanese ID card for you to be able to identify enough, like to say, okay, this is where I'm from. Most people don't have that. So if you are taking away my nationality as a German here, trying to push me into a place where I have no trace, no track, no one to call on to, how do you think I'm going to survive trying to regain or trying to find myself?
And quite frankly, I don't think that empathy is a strong suit of people who make such plans. So in that regards, the climate in Germany, who was also in October last year on the number one between all the European countries when it comes to racism, and we feel that, and not only we as adults feel that, but also our children feel that. So this last week alone, there were 2 counts of reported racism from young boys. One of them was in a bus, and he was racially, verbally attacked, and the situation was about to escalate, and then he fled the bus and he was hit by a car. These are very, very sad situations. I remembered sharing their incident in one of the groups, parents of Black children with about 500 members, and immediately there were accounts of other children and young people who experienced racist bullying more than once. And one of the young boys I recently met, and I asked him about his situation, and he was telling me, that they were kind of kicking and beating him, and his face got injured. And the only reason that we know about it is because his mom was only 10 minutes or 10 meters or so behind him and saw the whole incident. So normally he would have not even come home to tell, because the whole
and that's just because
upheaval around it is not a nice thing, and keep talking about it is also a form of re-traumatization. So often children swallow that in silence, and very often when children actually lash out to defend themselves, they are the one then blamed as being the perpetrators and being aggressive and needing help. But the whole lineup before children get so angry and lash out themselves, nobody really pays attention to, because apparently that's normal.
Is it okay for me to say, because I've also heard about situations where, or I've seen cases, because where I work, one woman came and talking about this racism situation. She's taking a German language course. So she actually told me about a case, a scenario in a classroom where, nobody owns a seat in a class. So she came into the classroom one day, and there is a particular spot that this Vietnamese lady is always using. So that day she came early, so she sat on that space, and this lady came over to her and told her, "Hey, but this is my spot. Just get off my spot." And she was like, "Hey, there are other empty seats. I came to the class before you, so why are you asking me to leave and look for somewhere else?" So they had this kind of heated conversation there, and then the tutor or the language instructor came and they're like, "Hey, you guys should at least look for a way to have a common ground." But again, these are some of the things. Just because you think you are lighter than I am makes you superior over me. And she was really bitter about it. And then she went further to tell me that even her son, who is in an all-white school, is going through the same thing, because the last time her husband went to pick up this young boy, he was left alone with the teachers, all these aiders sitting around, and this young boy was crying, struggling to put on his shoes, left-sided, like opposite sides, and the whole of her nostrils was covered with how you call it, mucus. And the man felt so bad, and he spoke bitterly to the teachers that, "Look, my son cannot be helpless, and you guys are there watching him crying. All these ones are well put together. Why is just this one left alone?" And then I noticed that sometimes we do things for ourselves again, because you cannot see a case or a situation, an institution like that, and then you go further to put your son inside, because he's going to be fighting with a whole lot of psychological battles.
I think that many parents don't have the choice, because the schools that have a better policy and have a large number of Black children, they're not that many. So if you're not in that catchment area, or if the school is full, you don't have a choice. I know of a case of a young girl that is parked in one of these welcome classes where you're supposed to learn English with other where you're supposed to learn German with other non-German children. A theory that escapes me, because it's quite clearly that when you want to learn a language, you have to surround yourself with children that speak it. So to be in an isolated place somewhere else, doesn't make sense. And all the schools rejected this young girl to come and start in a bilingual school, for example, Portuguese or English, which would have been much easier way into the system. Unless you can pay thousands of euros in private school fees, there are just not that many places in affordable, good schools within, and there are none within a Black context in Germany, so that makes it also really harder.
But this is why, okay, for the young boy, that was a kindergarten. As we know, there are lots of them around town, plus you have one that you manage.
We're about to open, in partnership with Kita-Träger, German Kita-Träger, another one of Black kindergartens. But we were talking about schools and also kindergartens. Now there will be 3 in Berlin, where Black children can grow up with less of a pressured environment, and other kitas who are sort of on the way. But there is really not enough places for, and also there isn't enough awareness within other kindergartens what it's like when you're the only Black child, or when you're in a situation, where you're a group of Black children, but there is no Black teachers, or the only one alibi that doesn't really have the power to make the kind of changes that help children to grow up with a healthy sense of identity.
So we always talk about community building. I always want to give out examples in comparison to other communities, how some of them are better established. For example, the Turkish community, I know they've been year-long way before we came, and they are like the second-class citizen of this country, if I may say so. They have greater opportunities. But again, that is what we should be looking at. For example, if we have more and more kitas that will cater for the need of our own children, it gives them a better chance. I think is going to dilute this kind of bullying that is happening all over. And not only about that, we should talk about, or we should look into establishing institutions that we cater for the needs of our psychological problem. In relation to the incident that happened again last month about this Nigerian woman who committed suicide. I think she's 38 years old with a 4-year-old young, is it a boy or a girl? But a little girl. And I learned that this child is, heavily injured, and the woman lost her life. I think the Berliner Zeitung reported that it was a suicidal thing because both of them were on the train track. We don't know for a fact, but that is the news that came to us. But again, what could have been the reason that this woman would choose to take away her life and that of her child?
Well, to deal with daily racism, and I refer to the Afro census as one of the only places that did some sort of research into this kind of daily reality for Africans in Europe, in Germany, is taking tolls in terms of also the mental health. And this case of this mother and child is tragic, but it's not the first case. There have been many people, well known is May Ayim, one of my colleagues from the 60s, who committed suicide in 69. It's very sad situation that the mental health, gets affected, and people feel there isn't any way out anymore. I find that very tragic, but it is not a surprise, because when you look at the situation, it's very complex, because if you're not feeling well, you may be going to a white doctor who may play down your condition. There aren't really enough black therapists. So one thing leading to the other in the problem either not being diagnosed or not being looked at with the severity that it might be requiring. And even if people are hospitalized due to their mental health, very rarely, is the real reason, this kind of trauma and re-traumatization throughout your life. That we know there is a study, IKK study, racism, makes you ill. We know that, but very rarely is the real reason recognized, because within this context of white therapists, many play the impact of racism down, and because it is not part of their life experience. Last week, I was teaching a group of students in a school about, the subject was migration, forced and voluntary migration. And we looked at the numbers. We saw that the number of migrants in Berlin and in Germany, with respect to that come from all the African countries together, does not succeed the number of Ukrainians currently in this country. So this shows also that within the media, there's always this perpetuation of referring to Africans, and in the deportation, these are mostly the examples. But if you look at the numbers of people that came here, and also what economically people are contributing to this country, more than 30 milliard euros on taxes comes from people, and people, no, not just African in general, all the people that migrated. And so that part of the fact that Germany is benefiting from that, the part that Germany needs the needs us to be there, because a lot of our people are the ones that take care of the elderly, that do cleaning, that, you know, provide so many beautiful variety in terms of food and culture. So it's quite a significant contribution, and quite clearly that the economy needs our people, yet we are still on this legacy of colonialism and slavery, and the kind of racist images about our people is what's prevalent. And in that sense, there is very little empathy with the kind of pressure and difficulties that we face. And yes, in some cases, people, you know, don't feel supported, even by our own communities, and they give up.